What's up, everybody? Welcome to Wealth Through Liberation. I'm Mandy Bynum. I am so glad you are here today. We are in this beautiful space called Rhythm Section here in Oakland at the Art House. I'm joined today by two extraordinary leaders whose work sits at the intersection of liberation, wealth, and care. Sabia Wade is a revolutionary doula, somatic practitioner, investor, and educator. As the CEO of the Black Doula Inc., Birthing Advocacy Doula Trainings, and For the Village Inc., she's transforming how we think about birth, justice, and community healing. Tenesha Duncan is a Black feminist strategist and the founder of Orchid Capital Collective, an investment firm reimagining reproductive care through community ownership and funding. With over a decade of experience in reproductive justice, philanthropy, and venture capital, Tenesha is shifting power and resources to the people most impacted. These two futurists are liberating us all with their work. And today we're going to talk about how they're doing it, what they've learned, and why we must hold conversations about liberation and wealth in the same breath. Welcome. So, given the premise of this conversation of both liberation and wealth, self-actualization and wealth in the same breath, what brings you here today?
What brings me here is wanting to see the conversation of wealth, money, financial wellness, all these things coming to like the average person, right? Like a lot of my work is really like I tell people in one day I can talk to, my doulas who are working on the ground, really talking to people who are deeply marginalized, right? And then in the other conversation, I'll be talking to someone who's in a fund or this or that, right? And they're super out of touch with what's actually happening on the ground. And in my role, I feel like I'm the bridge, right? So I'm like taking this conversation and translating it to this person and taking this conversation and translating it to this person to say, like, how can we make these two things and these two opinions, two thoughts, two like conversations, one conversation. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Tenesha?
Yeah, I'm here because after spending so much time around material wealth, working in philanthropy and venture capital, what's become really important and apparent to me is all the other types of wealth we don't talk about: cultural wealth, spiritual wealth, emotional wealth, physical wealth. There's all of that is such a part of this conversation, and we really leave it just about money. If we're going to talk about liberation, then it comes from all of that internal work, all of our ancestors, everything that's held in our pasts and our present and the future that we're dreaming about is about how we walk around and be well and build around us and build community. There's so much more than the material. And so that's what brings me here. Through my work, we're moving money and resources, but taking a really big emphasis on who's doing this work and how they're healing in the process. So that's what brings me here. It feels really important to have that conversation as people of color talking about this.
As I'm hearing you say that, Tenesha, I'm thinking of my maybe 27-year-old self of like, that's so easy for her to say. She's probably like rich or like has this X resource, Y resource. So let's talk more about your journeys. Like, how did you get to this place? You didn't wake up like this at 22. You didn't, from what I know, neither of you grew up on a compound where you've been talking about spiritual liberation your whole lives. So tell me, give us like a bullet point of like your career where you started. And Sabia, obviously we have your book here. You've written all about it, but you started in the hospital space.
Yes. So I started in, really honestly, it was like 20, 21, 22, where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. everyone's telling me I'm supposed to have a career and I'm supposed to, do these things, right? Our parents are what my mom is 57. So, her idea at that time was like, you need to get a job, you need to retire, you need to find this career. I've been at my job for this many years. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds torturous. Yeah. So I so it did. So but my other side of my family, my dad's side was full of like my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He had laundromats, he had a construction company, he had a bar. It was a whole thing. So for me, it was like kind of seeing both of those things and saying like, well, what is my thing? But I didn't know it because I'm 20 something years old and I just don't know who I am yet. So I started off as a certified nursing assistant, and everyone was like, "You're going to be wiping hinds and doing all this stuff," and I was, but I loved it. Like I just loved taking care of people, and that was like when we're talking about wealth, like that felt wealth, like it felt wealthy for me. Like I get to interact with these people and I get to help them and I get to learn. I get to be this like strong structure for them. Like I get to be the support system for them. And then I thought I was going to go into nursing. I thought I was going to go into like being a nurse practitioner. I also wanted to be an ER doctor. I was like thinking about all this medical stuff. No shade to the medical people. Love y'all, necessary. But I actually injured myself at work and became I had to do light duty, and I started working with like the chief nursing officer, right? Because I always had like these leadership qualities about me anytime I was in a space. But being in that space and seeing how numbers translated to people and people to numbers, and it just was a mismatch, I was like, I don't want to do that. I heard about doulas, living in Philly, being in an art scene, and then finally, being 20 something years old, I was like, I'm in love. I'm gonna go. I was like, I'm gonna go move with my ex or whatever at the time. I was like, I'm gonna move to Boston. But I knew that I needed to have something because it was a terrible relationship. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. But I found the Prison Birth Project, and I was like, I want to do that doula program because I was like, I've never thought about people being incarcerated. I never thought about what it meant to be pregnant in jail. I never thought about what their resources are. What do they have? Like I just never did it. And for me, I'm always like, I want to go deep into the thing. So I did that, and it was wonderful. And I was a volunteer full spectrum doula for 2 years. I was still working in the medical field, but doing more like admin stuff. And then I got my first like paid client, who was a Black woman who reached out to me and found me. Was like, hey, no one on my medical team looks like me. And I was like, you want me there? I was like, oh, and you're gonna pay me? So even that, like the concept of it wasn't even there for me yet. That like I can get paid for something that I do. Worked with her, and then pretty much decided to move to San Diego after some health issues and move over to the doula world over there. Found out that the doula world there was really robust, but not community centered. Right? I was like, where is like the reproductive justice? Where is the inclusion? Where's the Black maternal health rates? Like that wasn't a part of it, and that was odd to me because it was so robust, but all the like foundational pieces weren't there. Like where's the queer and trans liberation? Like none of it was there.
So when you say robust, what do you mean?
It was so many doulas. Like people were they were. It was like a very like it was a doula. It was a doula economy. Like everybody had like this is how much you get paid. You can go over here. People have the funding. They know what doulas are. It was like a doula was like an accessory bag. Like everyone wanted one, but no one. I'm not saying they didn't need one because everyone needs a doula. But where I came from, like it was a different situation. So from there, I created my nonprofit, and that was really an answer to myself being a Black doula there, which is like few because San Diego doesn't have a big Black population. Yeah. But I was doing a lot of low income to like low income work to help my community, and I was like, this is not going to work. I'm going to burn out. So I created my nonprofit. We got funded. It was a whole thing. That was in 2018 for the Village came, and that was my first business. And I didn't know anything about building a nonprofit. I just was like, I know we need to do this, and if I can train people of the community for free and start paying them, we can have so much reach here. And also, I wanted people of the community to be serving the community, right? And other programs were not people of the community; they were people who had the privilege to volunteer. And I think there is a privilege to being able to volunteer. Yeah. And then after that, we started doing that. Then 2019, I created birthing advocacy doula trainings, and that was also a call to not seeing myself in other people's trainings. Like people were trying to like bring me in, become this kind of doula, become this kind of doula. And every time I would look at their programming, if there was anything about being Black, anything about being queer, it was like a paragraph. It was like, we're going to sum up Blackness in one page, right? And it was a lot of really bad, misinformation. So I created something that I felt I would want to be in. So I created BADC, eventually had to open the whole, the Black Doula Inc. But this is all like, I'm not a business person. Yeah. And like, so I started like, making more money, doing more things. And basically in 2019, I think I made my first like $100,000. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm living it up, y'all. Like, I was like, I'm doing it. And then 2020 happened. And, that was a year of everybody buy everything Black, right? But we were already set up to be online. We were already set up for that time period. So 2020, we quadrupled to 450 at the end of the year. Wow. And also I was doing so much, but I also had lost 4 people in COVID. And so it was like I was in this space of like great grief, but also like great expansion and like great success at the same time. But in that year was when I really started to look at, what do I do with this money? I mean, I started to hire teams, and I'm always community driven, right? I'm like, let me hire people on, like, let's get you in here, working parents, people that are in my community. But also I was like, what do I do? Because no one in my family has made money like this. And I'm like, I hear what other people do, and I hear about this thing and that thing. And so I started to really get into that. I did an internship at Advocates Wealth, even though I was already a client there. And I was with the students, and they were like, I'm just getting out of college. I was like, not me. I'm 30 something years old, and I'm just trying to figure it out. Then I went into doing a venture fellowship after I became an accredited investor. So it was just been a journey of like literally just being in it, not learning about it, if that makes sense. I didn't know anything about, I didn't think I was ever going to have a financial advisor. I thought you had to be like a multi-millionaire to do that at the time, right? I didn't know anything about accredited investing. I didn't know about venture capital. I didn't know about any of that. It was really like, I am growing. These things are becoming more, they're coming to me. People are educating me about these things. And now I'm becoming a part of this thing, but also stepping into spaces virtually, right? And seeing that I'm only one of few, if only one of one. And people looking at me, especially when I say I'm a doula, right? Because everyone's like giving all their labels, right? Like, I'm the this, I'm the that, and I'm like, I'm a doula, and they're like, what are you doing here, right? So just dealing with a bunch of that, and just I don't know, finding my way to being here. Now it's like 5 years later since 2020, and I thought honestly too, just to be really transparent, I thought 2020 was just my good year. I was like, I'm not gonna replicate this, right? It's not gonna happen again, and somehow, some way, it keeps happening. So it was a lot of like really having to trust myself too when we talk about that wealth, like going into that ancestral knowledge of like, how do I want to do business, right? Because I give 30% of scholarships away every year. I'm very community driven, right? How can I maintain this outside of this 2020 everybody buy Black thing? And so it was also a lesson on that, like trusting myself and trusting the wisdom that was there, and also trusting people that understood my specific journey, that weren't giving me this blanket information of how to build business, if that makes sense. Because that blanket it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that. Thank you for trusting me to interrupt you a little bit. Okay, cool. Tenesha, how about you?
So my journey starts in 2009. Okay. My first job out of college was to go and work at an abortion clinic in Texas. And, we're in the middle of a recession, trying to find work, an undergraduate psychology and Spanish degree. What do you do with that? And I'm sure your parents loved that. Yeah. Everybody was thrilled.
Especially the island gals.
They were pretty split. I think my mom was supportive. Everybody was pretty supportive, but people were a little split and maybe didn't know or understood that in college, like I was a student athlete, but I also volunteered at the Women's Resource Center. So these things were important to me, but going to work at a clinic was a big deal. And in a place like Texas, right? So I started to work there for a few years, and then ended up leaving, going back to school to get my master's degree in psychology, thought I wanted to be a therapist, but I really fell in love with the work at the clinic. Being there, being a part of that kind of journey for people, essentially working as a doula, but on staff in a clinic, going through every aspect, talking to people before, during, after a procedure, walking with people through this really tender moment. And so when I finished my master's degree, they actually asked me to come back and be the director of the clinic. Wow. So I was 26 years old and taking on this very big role. And that 2 months after I took that job, the state of Texas passed its first major legislation, which closed a third of the clinics in the state. So here I am as well, I mean, essentially in the role of an executive director, administrator of a surgery center, let me be very clear, and learning on the fly, like, how do we scale up immediately? Right. Had to double the staff, triple the physician staffing, grow the clinic from being able to see, you know, a smaller amount of people to tripling that, and managing all of the compliance and legislation, and at the same time in a place where they didn't want you to exist. So there's no Medicaid reimbursement. There is no insurance, or very little insurance reimbursement. So managing a business with tight margins and making sure that we were offering care that aligned with both reproductive justice in the care model and then also reproductive justice in taking care of the staff. So I was very young to take on a role like that. And I started asking questions. Yeah. I got really curious. I was learning and talking to all of the other clinics throughout the state, learning what they were doing, testing things out, creating whole training programs for how we operate and develop the organization, develop the staff, and maintain and manage the state trying to shut us down, every chance that they got. And so I took that knowledge, that experience, and wanted to go support other people into thinking about how do we do this sustainably? Because it's a lot to burn out, the exhaustion, and people don't understand what that work is. And they judge it. And it was like I couldn't share and talk about it unless it was just with the people I was doing that work with. Yet we were all walking around here having experienced, we all access reproductive health care. Abortion is part of the whole continuum of someone's journey in their life. And we couldn't talk about it. So I wanted to be in a place and move in a direction where I could be supporting other clinics to be doing what I had learned to do, which was to figure this out and to create a space that could be a bit more sustainable. So I moved to working at a national organization. I was supporting clinics in the US, Canada, and Latin America. I mean, and all at the same time, watching what happens when the legislation was also contributing to really poor outcomes in maternal health. And myself doing my own education, the strengthening of my own view around reproductive and birth justice. So then I was working nationally, seeing all this incredible work happening, especially the work that was being led deep in community by midwives and doulas, and they weren't getting the resources. So I started to ask those questions. I started leading groups of providers. I was organizing them, running these different communities, and starting to build relationships with funders. And I was like, oh, maybe philanthropy is where I can go to start liberating some of this money into different places. And you think that, and then you enter a very different world. I thought I'd been in places where I didn't think I belonged until I entered into like philanthropy and venture capital and impact investing. And then I had to start a different education about what it meant to be around people with material wealth and how people operate in those rooms. So I spent some time at a VC firm. That did not work out for me, but it was an excellent education. And then I went to work at a foundation, and that's where things really started to blossom. I built out their birth equity portfolio, and then eventually founded Orchid. I went in with the intention to do this. So whether they were going to give me the money or not, I was like, I'm starting something and I'm going to create a fund and a place where we can do this kind of work. And like Sabia, I'm not sure I knew all of it, right? You're in it, you're learning, but I also learned that nobody else really knew either. Even if all these people who were around me, I felt so bad. I know we'll talk about this more, but I was like, oh, I don't have 20 years of finance experience, and I don't have this, and I don't have that. And then I realized that wasn't helping all of them either. They didn't know how to move this and move in community. They didn't understand racial equity in the way that showed up. They weren't holding all this knowledge that I was actually holding. So my journey has been this, I dove into this work because I was like, oh, I'm just going to get a job out of college. And really fell in love with, I care about us. I care about having more and better. And I really wanted to carve out a path that was going to take me there, because I didn't think I would stay in direct service forever. That's hard work.
It is
I
hard
have
work.
so much respect for people
Same.
in healthcare. It is incredible work to do and to stay in forever. I really wanted to expand and see where this journey was going to take me. And there are very few of us in the places where we're moving money. And I thought that could be the place where that could be.
So along your journeys, there's so many different turning points and moments that you remember or don't remember that you remember later that brought you to where you are today, and they're all small. And there's also generations before us. And so I'd love to hear from both of you. What are some of those things that are really poignant for you about how you navigated both relationships in your working spaces, and how you managed, how you understood how to keep people at a particular distance for your own protection, whether they were bosses or coworkers, and then also how you dealt with different generations, whether it was your family or those you thought were supporting you. But let's start with those within your working spaces first.
I remember when I wasn't working for myself yet, and those moments really pushed me to be like, you have to do something else. And working in like corporate spaces, I mean, there's moments where, I mean, I have so many moments, but at one point I needed, and I talk about in my book when I needed surgery for fibroids and things like that. And I was working at a job and I was like, oh, I'm so good. You know, I got my own office, my this, my that, and whatever. And literally they were like, we're not holding your position, even though you need like life-saving surgery. And so then either way, I ended up suing them. It was a whole thing. And I just remember that being like the point with other things happening, right? Just I remember being a CNA, even being on light duty, like that experience that I told you. And the chief nursing officer was a Black woman, and she was like, "I want you to learn these things. Like I feel like you're capable of this kind of thing." But I remember other executives just having a problem with me just being in the space, just learning was a problem. Like her vision for me was a problem, and just realizing that I just wasn't desired in that space, and realizing that the closer I was to myself, the further away I was from what they wanted me to be. Right? So the more that I just, it's those little things too, right? Like when you show up to work and you got braids in your hair, right? And someone's like making a thing about it, like a negative thing. Or I remember one time, because I have a septum ring, and my coworker, who we were on the same level, came to me and told me that our boss wanted me to take out my septum ring, but she had a regular nose ring.
Your boss did?
No, the coworker did. And I was like, so how come you don't have to take out yours, but I have to take out mine? And I was like, it looks like we have a difference that's here that seems to play a part in this. And just like those things that I just like, I kept saying like I wanted to be a registered nurse, and I wanted to, up level to this, up level to that, and in every aspect of it, just getting pushback, and not pushback because I did something wrong, not pushback because it was pushback because I needed to stay in my place around how smart I was showing myself to be, right? And I was like, that's when I started to really feel that I was a threat just by who I was. Not because I did anything, but just because of who I was and because of who I am and what I look like showing up confidently was a no-no, right? Just being in places where people would get, we had a team meeting and, I was part of the management team and everyone would get like their roll call, like, oh, this one did this and this one did that. But my good thing was only talked about in private. Oh, thank you for doing this. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, well, how come we couldn't have the celebration like we did for everybody else? So those moments really pushed me into saying, like, what do I want my life to look like? And where do I want my freedom? I know I'm gonna have to work. Unless I marry rich and whatever, like I'm gonna which is probably not gonna happen, like I'm gonna have to work. That's fine. I can accept that, right? But what is the kind of work that I want to do? How do I want to be living? How do I want to feel when I do my work? And those moments really shifted that. And then getting into being, a boss and also kind of stuff. I think creating boundaries around not being mammified. I really had a few years where I learned that even in my community, I love my community, right? That I was supposed to be processing people's feelings for them. That if anyone had a problem, I had to be the solution.
Why?
I think people were just looking at me as I'm this Black, strong, head of this, head of that. And I think one of the things that happens too, in my experience, is that as a Black woman, when I was low, right? Low as in what people just define as like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm this, I'm that. When people started to get a glimmer of any, like, I don't have to struggle in this area, it was like, well, let me put more on you. Right? Let me put more on you. Oh, you're okay this way? I got to put more on you. You always have to feel the heaviness of something. You always have to be problem solving. You always have to be figuring it out. You always have to be processing my emotions. This is your role. Right? Oh, now you can pay your bills and you're okay. Oh, now I got to put more on you. Right? I can't just let you breathe. Yeah. Right? And so for me, it had to be letting go of guilt of saying like, yo, I need to breathe. My cup is empty. Yeah, my cup is empty. Like, and if it's not empty, I just want to relax. Right. And I had to really put those boundaries up in personal relationships, right? And in friendships and work relationships, and also building a team that is structured to insulate me. Yeah. And before, my team wasn't built like that. It was like I was just exposing myself to everything and I didn't have any layers of protection before it got to me, right? And now, so many years later, I'm like, okay, the team has to be insulated so that this issue starts here and it gets to me when it's necessary. Yeah. Instead of me just absorbing, because my business is only as healthy as I am, right? And I kind of felt the other way around. If my business is healthy, then I'll be healthy, and it's trash. The business is only as healthy as I am, and I deserve to be protected in the thing that I have built.
Amen. Amen. And I feel like people have such a hard time. Tenesha, and I want to hear from you next, because I know this is something we talked about this week. That is so hard to learn. For me, for sure. I'm still struggling. Yeah.
I'm still doing the work that I want to do. I'm still dedicated to the people that I'm dedicated to. I'm still providing the access and the things and listening, and right, but I deserve to be protected. Right? And that means that people are going to not like me sometimes. They're going to think, I'm this, that, and the other. I'm going to be all types of whatever. And I have to accept that that's a part of it if I want to sustain the work that I want to do. Because I felt like the money and all that is, that's part of sustainability, but it's my wellness that really sustains this. And if my wellness is not good, then nothing will be good.
Yeah. And something that I want to emphasize there is that no one can do that except you. And so many people who are watching this, who I coach and who I work with, I'm like, no one out there, your white ass boss ain't gonna validate you. They are not gonna provide this stuff for you because they have no idea what you're experiencing. None.
And they also don't have the lens to see it.
Zero.
Right? So it's like, they come to the
hardly
space
do.
and they're like, there's no threats. And you're like, there's so many threats.
we hardly have the lens to see it. It takes years for us to realize that, oh, wait a second. I'm suffering, and as soon as I can see something clearly, they're going to put more on me. Mm-hmm. Like, it took me years to see that. Tenesha, please go ahead, please.
Well, people also aren't doing it for themselves, so we like aspire to this material wealth. We see other people, and a lot of people are really miserable.
Really miserable. Really miserable.
Really miserable. I mean, so for me, I think very similar to you, I would say like every job I've quit was like this turning point in this really important moment. And quitting the clinic, I think especially, I remember it, and it's something I've carried for such a long time, where I made a decision that was about the sustainability of my staff, of the people who were working. And the owners were like never there. So I was really running things, and it was a tight ship. But we had a week that was a little off because people were like unwell. I had to just manage and make a decision that was about sustainability versus like productivity, I guess. And that ended up becoming this big thing between me and the owners.
Fascinating.
And it was one day, 1 week that didn't capture the 3 or 4 years that I had been just burning myself out, working 70, 80-hour weeks, just pushing and pushing and pushing constantly. And this 1 week happened. They happened to be in town, saw that this was not what he would have wanted to happen. I was like, I had to make this decision. I really had no other choices. And he called me a failure. We had a meeting and he called me a failure.
I'm glad I wasn't there, girl, because you know how I feel about that. Because, you know, I'm
called me a failure. And at that age, I maybe thought that, I wouldn't react the way that I did. And I was like, a failure? After what I've done here? I walked in 3 days later and I was like, I'm giving notice. I'm giving like a few months of notice to be kind, but I won't continue to stay here. And other people had stayed working for them for a long time, decades, right? Yeah. And I was like, I won't be talked to like that. So that was like one very important juncture moment for me. The next job, similar thing, very toxic environment, very difficult place to be and work. And just along the way, every job I've found myself. This next layer of like what I will and won't tolerate. And when I quit the VC firm, I didn't have a backup plan. But that weekend before I had been off, it was like Labor Day weekend. And I had a great weekend. So joyful, having a great time. Literally walked into the office like on the Tuesday and my stomach was in shambles. My body was like, we can't be here anymore. This isn't a place you can exist in anymore. Doesn't align with where you want to be. And I didn't have a lot of animosity towards everyone. I just was like, this isn't the right place for me. I haven't found my place yet. And I quit. So it's like all of these things have taught me about what do I need in community and relationship with people? What does reciprocity mean to me? Which became a very big value that I've been holding and carrying a lot, even in starting Orchid now. And also that I've learned so much that even if you think your values aligned with people, how we move in that is really different. Yeah. And so along the way, I think all of these, like every job I've quit has become this, but also then on the personal side, meeting my husband, just something shifted and flipped in me of like, I can be treated so well.
That part.
Like, and really just appreciated for the person that I am, for how direct I am, for how intense I am, for all of these characteristics that out in the world and in these other places, everyone was like, oh, you're so serious. And we're so uncomfortable with you telling the truth and saying what you think, you need to tame that down. You need to temper that, right? Yeah. And along the way, I kept getting to these places to be like, I can't temper this anymore. Yeah. My body was like bursting with, I need to live and be the person that I am and exist and work with the people I want to spend time with and build an organization where I had a place to come back to where I'm held and respected and appreciated, and where I can talk about what's happening outside of here. I can go to these investor meetings and come back to a place where people understand exactly what happened when I tell them what happened. So yeah, I think for me it's been that, and it's been interesting because in my family is like, what's your plan? Like they don't know any honestly, they couldn't tell you what I do.
Mine either.
That's when I knew that like something was so different. I'm, first generation college student. My brother always had a job or businesses that were really clear to everybody, but I didn't. Wasn't
Same.
always, and isn't straightforward now. So to be creating, and I had to start finding the aunties and the mentors who were in these spaces and places in order to start filling some of these gaps and helping me just to know that what I had been experiencing for years, for a decade into my career, was not my imagination.
Oh, man. Yes. Oh, this is so true. So good.
I think too, like the relationship part, like part of what created in my personal life, tightening up my friendships, my romantic life, was inspired by my business. Because I went into it, just whatever, green. And when I started building my businesses, dealing with the different things that come with it, good, bad, in between, I recognized that I would not survive unless I had something as people to hold me in that process. And I started to really say, like, my mom is my bestie. Okay, you already know how she give it up.
Everybody's bestie.
Yes, I know, literally. Mama, she'll be your bestie next. But having my mom be like a very like a rock for me, always been my best friend through like everything. And we're two different people, but we're also the same. But having that, but then like requiring people to meet me and love me in a very specific way, right? Like, and my friends, like my friends are from like 14, 15 years old, like having that kind of, the people that can call you out and call you in, right? Then like also that helped me to really like go into having like my partner being like, I can't, it's just certain stuff that's not going to be accepted here because like I love my work, right? And like I think we can quote unquote have it all, whatever people want to say, right? Like that's a whole nother thing. But I think that we can, but it requires us to say like, I need to be protected. I need to have people in my life. Like my partner is a daffodil. She's the sweetest little dandelion you will ever meet. She's just so tender, but she also don't play about me, right? And like will show up, right, when I need her to. And so it's just like having those things, you start to think about it, like I need this reflected in my business too. Right. And like I deserve for that to be reflected when I go home, when I go to work, when I navigate the world and the relationships and collaborations that I'm within. That is what I deserve, even if they don't think so. Right. And like I put like a part of my like brand like Black luxury, and people are like, oh, Black luxury. I'm like, no, it's really just saying don't play with me. Like don't think you're gonna talk to me any kind of way. Don't think you're gonna do anything with me. Don't think that you're gonna just like make me feel like I'm not the prize here too. Right. Like you're asking to collaborate with me for a reason. Right. And I think sometimes like before that kind of like realization, I was always like, oh, I should just be so grateful. Let me just be so grateful. Right. And like, of course it's gratitude, but it's also like, I'm also a part of this. I'm also adding something to this, right? And I deserve to be cared for that.
And something you said earlier about like the 27-year-old or the young person who's watching this is like, oh, you can say all this. And now these are active lessons.
Yes.
These are real things we're practicing in real time. Sabia and I met 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the friendship with her has changed a lot about what I expect from other people. These are like real time shifts and changes that are happening in both of our lives. And so I I do want anybody who is watching and hearing that to know, like, that's the unfortunate thing. And my mentors who are in their 50s and 60s are saying the same thing to me, like, this is never ending.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the framework of Sanctum is 3 parts: community, power, and practice. Because all of these things we're talking about, as you're saying, are a practice that we have to practice every single day. And we're going to come back to that at the end. But let's get back into venture. What a space! What a space!
It's interesting.
It is an interesting space. Each of us have come into venture in a different way. I came in more or less as an LP, which for those out there, it's limited partner, where you invest in a fund, not directly into a company. Sabia, you invest directly into companies. You've worked at a fund. So I would love to hear a little bit, maybe talk for 2 minutes about what your experience was like when you first entered, and how your values and how you thought about liberation and creativity as a resistance towards like the whiteness and the approximation or proximity to whiteness, and how we as culture need to return to our rhythm in order to use maybe some of the frameworks of venture capital and investing in order to liberate us as a people.
Yeah, I would say coming into this work as learning about being an accredited investor and like doing those kind of things, like I've learned it was interesting to me because it was like, here's these businesses, here are different levels, right? Because then I also did, like I said, my venture fellowship to really understand things better. And it was like, seed and this and da da da. And I was like, okay, this is great, right? And me being a person who loves, my personality is to love different types of existing, right? I'm like, this is a different type of investing. Let me see like how I can navigate in this space and also still be mindful about my values and things like that. But also, I think one of the things that gets missed, I think when people come into venture, or get so just like inundated with it, is like you can make so much impact just giving money to your community. In the same breath of like investing into companies, I've also invested my money into birth centers. I've invested my money into giving to people that I feel like are just going to make change and shift things, right? So I think for me, it's like VC it's a very interesting space, especially on who they see as most valuable, right? But also, it's really created a space for me to have conversations with people where I'm like, venture is not for you, right? And I'm like, because they're like, I'm just gonna get to venture, right? Because it comes as very like fantastic. I'm gonna build this so quick, and I'm like, but maybe you don't need to build quick. Maybe you need to build slow, right? And maybe you want to keep your ownership, and maybe you want to keep the vision, and maybe you want to keep the feel, and maybe you want to keep the community, right? Because they're gonna talk about expanding the market, making it this, making it that, and I'm like, and for some other people, I'm like, hey, if your idea is like, I want to sell this thing, and it's great, and I'm cool with that, then that's great. But I think for me, becoming an investor, coming into spaces where, because I'm not the finance person, like that's not my center, I'm not so quick to be excited about things. Because I'm like, that same money could have went into making this person a midwife. This same money could have went into this birth center. This same money could have went into this doula. This same money could have went into this community, right? The same money could have been to buying land and expanding community and building homes. And I think people have to really be mindful, for me, around the impact that they want to make. And like Tanisha's saying, like, it's not just material. And I think VC it's a material space, right? We want to get 10 times our return. We want to do this. And that's fine, right? To some degree, if you want to do that. But I think that is a colonial way of thinking, right? Like, it's like, I have to get money back and have to return. Like, okay, cool. But also with that 10,000, you could have bought an acre of land and you could have built a couple homes. And you could have like fed into a family, your own family. And you could have, there's so much. So really thinking about like, what is it that I want to create, and what is the impact, and what is the legacy that I want to leave? And I think it's okay to say, I want a 10 times return in this, but it's also, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
right? And I think sometimes it's really easy. It's like, a really dopamine seeking space where you're like this and this and this. And it's like somatically, I feel like when I go into a like VC space, people are out of their bodies. They're not in them.
Completely out of their bodies.
They're not in them. And so me being like this doula who like, and also just a person who's like really chill, I'm like, I don't think that that's as exciting as you think it is. I think you're caught up in the energy of the space, and we're not thinking about the long-term impact and legacy, and also the communal impact, right? Because if we're taking all this ownership away, are we really helping?
Right. Amen.
Yeah, it feels accidental the way it ended up. I really thought I was going into this like impact investing space, and one that was where I could build this balance between the things. And I ended up spending a lot more or splitting my time doing some venture. I was trying to build out what the approach could be around maternal health and making sure to bring equity and justice into that conversation. And I really just got a great crash course on it. And Sabia knows I love learning in school, so I went really academic around it too. Like, I want to understand the model. What's the approach? Why is it like this? What does that mean? How do you design a fund? Why is it that you're banking? This was the thing. When I started learning about the mechanics of it, it totally demystified it for me. Yeah. It stopped being really exciting. The dopamine wasn't interesting to me because I would see these pitch decks and I was like, what does this mean? Yeah. I can throw on a bunch of numbers on a addressable market and call it like and make something up, right? It all felt so made up for me, which was really interesting. And then listening to people just say made up things back and forth to each other was blowing my mind.
That's how I was sitting and I was like, what is happening here?
And then, so when I also learned basically that venture was about 80% of your fund failing, what you've invested in, like 80%, you bank on that to fail. You expect the other 20% to kind of make it up and hit a good few. And I was like, oh, this is just gambling and betting.
That's right.
And then I just finished this Just Economy Institute fellowship where we learned that VC has its roots in the slave trade.
Of course.
Right? Like everything else. Yeah. And so all of these things, especially when I just like learned the mechanics of how it was all working, I just was like, oh, I don't feel dumb. I don't feel like I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on here either. Things are successful when you invest in something and you keep supporting it. That's what makes it successful. It's not that this magical thing. It's that so many of these things that are successful from VC dollars, people then spent a bunch of their own human capital to really make them work. Yeah. And I don't think people talk enough about that. They just talk about the dollars that get poured in, but people are putting their social capital, like they're bringing their friends into deals. It's this whole whisper network that nobody is really explaining to people. And so when folks start seeking venture dollars or talking about something being venture scalable, I'm like, what is wrong with a CDFI loan or these other ways that you get to retain ownership and take on some capital? Like, I don't see a VC investment as different than debt when you're talking about a 10x return that someone is expecting, right? Sometimes it's worse. So it's
like a parent-child.
Yeah. So just being in and around the space. And then I remember I used to have to take like every meeting if it was a Black founder. It was like, Tenesha, you take this meeting. And then I would come back and I would report and I was like, actually, I think this is a good idea. It could be a really great business model, but these are the things that I think that they need. And what I kept seeing was that they didn't see us as a market and an opportunity. Sure. And I was like, I don't know the Black women that you probably don't know any, but we would eat this up. Yeah. And they didn't see us as a market. So I just more and more found myself saying, oh, they only wanted me around to either validate something or to take my language and use it and make it look like what they were doing had equity at the center, and it didn't. And then the other was they really didn't see us. And in now that learning, I was like, oh, VC is a tool like everything else. And in fact, it really doesn't work for most things. And the people who are running VC firms know it, because they're only banking on 20% of the things that they invest in to actually work. So they know it doesn't work for most.
And they put them in these
businesses.
spaces. Like, one of the things that I didn't expect from my experience of, because I don't have the degrees and the this and the that. That's not me. I've always been like, I don't know, I don't like school. Like, I like to learn, but I don't like school. And so one thing I didn't expect was for founders to find me, my little bootstrap little space over here, and say, I'm part of a VC situation. I've been, funded or whatever, but we don't know this, and we don't have a system for this, and we don't have structure for this, and can you help me build that? And I'm like, so you have this money, but they didn't teach you anything?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Sabia, you were talking about working and founders reaching out to you, and Tenesha too, please do answer this, and them not really having resources other than capital. And there's so many different ways I can go in this question, because oftentimes we have particular resources but no capital. So when you're talking to founders who need a lot of operational help, how are you like, but you shouldn't be having my time unless you're paying me?
Yeah. It gets difficult, right? Because you're also like, okay, what is the boundary? Right? Um, and so I think for me, I'm a very boundary person, I think. Like, I'm a very boundary person. And so the people that I talk to, if they're not able to, work with me like on a paid coaching basis, then I still have like open hours that I do for folks, right? But I try to be like, what is the high issue? Like, what is the most priority thing that we need to talk about? And let's work on that. But also for a lot of them, I try to tell them like, what is something that you could build within your company right now that people could just pay for? And that's really my thing, is like, hey, you have this money, but you're going to run out, right? Naturally, you're going to run out. You're going to have to go do another accelerator. You're going to have to go do this. You're going to have to do that. And really, I like to present to them, here's 3 things that you can do to start building your own money. Because I've seen so many founders who are VC backed who are able to build a team, and they got to let the team go. Able to build a team, got to let the team go, right? And I'm like, what can you do in here? And it's like, I think one of the things that kind of like, it's kind of my irritation point, is that, and this is not a general statement, but this as a bootstrapped kind of girly, people don't know how to sell anything. They don't know how to sell. Like, they don't know how to, like, they're like, it's such, sometimes it becomes like a hindrance, right? Of like, I know how to go to an accelerator, and I know how to, my pitch deck and my this and my that. But there's so many opportunities within their actual organization, like within their actual company, that I'm like, if you put this out, people would eat this up. And they're like, too scared, don't understand, can't do it. And I'm like, okay, but if we're going to do VC, and this is your company, and you want to, I do want you to start building your own revenue stream that is your own, because that's going to help pay for your salary. That's going to help you stop having to, take a salary cut and leave this team member and do this thing, right? So one, with my time, I have my boundaries around time, and I also have like places where people that are affordable, right? As affordable as you can get, in the space, right? But also just trying to really promote them to find ways of building revenue that is not dependent on just going to accelerators and going here. Because people that come my way are usually people of color. They have amazing things that they're doing. I believe in what they're doing, but they're afraid to get out of the VC narrow thinking. And I'm like, hey, like, you literally can make so much and secure something for yourself and have more freedom. And that's the part that they're missing. But they complain about it, right? They're like, I'm so tired. I have to go do this and I have to go do that for this. And I'm like, well, let's start building some pathways that are a little bit more liberating, that give you a little bit more say so in your own business. But I feel like there's a fear there.
Is that too, Tenesha?
Yeah, not quite as much, but yeah, I mean, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's VC, there's something that happens as soon as people start to receive capital and folks show
Yes.
interest in their work, where we lose ourselves.
Yes.
our anchor, our clarity about who we are. Everyone comes in with this why. We always have a story and a narrative about it, and then it's really easy to lose that because every type of money comes with strings. I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Always. So, I'm thankful I have an organization that is pretty funded right now in order to provide a lot of technical assistance, a lot of capacity building to founders, to folks. I spend time just doing office hours with people who are asking for my advice, and often it comes with it's mostly about fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly about how they hold on to who they are while they're having these conversations with people who are holding the strings and holding the power. And it's really scary and sad to see because they're such brilliant people, and we just get trapped in what other people expect of us, what other people want from us, and also in this our own trap of like watching other people and thinking we need to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be like that kind of founder. That person, I look up to them, they're amazing. I need to be like that. And we just get away from what we actually want to sell, what we
And who we
actually
want to
want
sell
to spend,
to.
what we want to spend our time doing, where we really want our stuff to show up. And so I see it all the time, and it's very frustrating. And it's just hard because even in the funding ecosystem, there's just not a lot in the middle. We are missing a really valuable piece of infrastructure, and I think it's growing. I see so many more impact funds and other types of intermediaries really showing up to try and create that space, but that's part of the problem. You do one or the other, or you never grow, you never access the capital and the resources, and we just sit in this middling space where the folks with the really brilliant ideas, with the drive, the community, like everything behind them, just don't get a chance to take off a little bit. And people aren't investing in them, and they end up in the wrong relationships and partnerships and burnout. And then it's the same cautionary tale every single time.
And I think too, like as a person who is not like of the VC world, but just has been in it in my own way. Like Tenesha, I'm looking at her, I'm like, oh, you're the like, the queen of this, and I'm like, I'm just, here over here. And she's like, yeah, but people are talking about you in these spaces that I'm in, right? And I'm like, why? I don't even go nowhere, right? I'm sitting in my little country house, my little country business, right? But I feel too that like when I was doing my VC like fellowship, and sometimes they would announce that people were opening funds, they would the person who was heading it would be like, everyone thinks it's you all the time, and I'm like, it ain't me. It's not me. So, but what I learned from that though was like, because I don't have, and mind you, this is like personality wise too, I don't have a desire to please anybody but my community, right? And because I did not start in this VC finance world, I don't have that same like knowledge of who's who and who should be so cool with me and how they like, I don't really care about that. And that's also just who I am as a person. You know that. So it's like, but because of that though, I think sometimes people are wanting me to be the fund manager because they're like, you're going to do it differently because you're not trying to please anybody, right? And I'm like, okay, but then that also made me think of like, especially for people that look like us in this like VC finance world, that hardship of knowing where you want to go and knowing the thing that you want to do, but being like, well, if I get off the path, am I going to be out of the club? Right.
Well, that's the liberation part.
Yeah.
Too.
And I'm like
realizing it's time to get off the path and not be part of the club. And you talked about it earlier, that proximity thing, it is tough to let go of. Yeah. Because it's a network, it's a space that's all about relationships and long-standing relationships. But that is the piece, and it's hard. I'm not saying that's an easy thing to just walk off the path and go do something different and try to build differently. It's really hard, and it's the most necessary thing. Yeah. Because when you walk off the path, you figure out how to either stand parallel to the path and plug into it, but you have your power intact. Where like, here's where I'll plug into this thing, but it's not everything to me anymore. I don't need the validation from it. I simply understand this tool and how to leverage it to build the thing that I want to build. And that's the piece I don't think folks understand. Like, we think staying in it and our face and our presence and the representation is going to be it, and it's going to change things, and it's not. It's when we jump off the path and we plug back into it and tell the path, we don't need you. It changes everything. And I don't know.
And when you understand too, like, what is power?
Yep.
Right. And like, me and Tenesha have this conversation all the time, right? Because I'm like, I'm not this like multi-billionaire, you know, I'm not that person. But she's like, what you have, I believe in. Right. Because it's something that is slow built. It is something that like feels good. Right. And I go on how I feel most of the time. Right. Like, I can't go on who's this, who's that. It's just like, how do I feel? Do I feel good about this? Right. And like, we don't
ask ourselves that enough.
Yeah.
We just talked about the somatics of it. That's what's so hard and was so hard about the space.
I mean, that's why I moved out of California.
Right.
I was living in San Diego. I was doing the California thing, and it's great. I love y'all Californians. Love y'all. I'll be here. But, you know, I moved out of California. Literally, I was living in San Diego. I started coming into money, but I started, people like, you know, you start going to places, going to restaurants, whatever. And people were looking at me like, girl, do you, like, repeating stuff to me, like, this costs this much. Girl, I know, right? But then I was like, let me move to Atlanta, because I was like, I need to like somatically see more Black and brown people at different levels of living, right? And then even when I lived there, and then I, you know, got my great grandparents' land and moved into the country, like, I live in rural North Carolina, right? That's not really the path where I want to be cool. It's like, but how does it make me feel? Right. And what does it model? Right. It's like, my freedom is my own. Right. And like, also, I think too, what people don't realize is that when you get off of that path, there's so many people over there.
Yeah.
You just don't see them when you're on it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But there's so many people over there. And when you get over there, they start clapping for you. They start finding you. They start like coming to you. They want to talk to you. And then the people that are also still on the path are start whispering to you, hey, I want to get off. Yes. How do I do it?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that we have to sometimes like understand, that we may not know the how or have like a complete model, but I think when people see and feel like, yo, you're looking a little freer these days. Your skin is going a little different. You're walking a little different. You're having a good time, right? And it's not the flashy thing that I thought it was supposed to be. It's actually way more simple. And I want to be a part of that. You start being like, okay, this is why I got off the path, to free myself and also to free others.
Yeah. It's like, I ain't making as much money as you, but I feel pretty damn good.
Well, also, I probably am, though. But also, that's what, like, you know what I mean? Like, could we look at, like, I probably am, because the way that I'm living is so simple, right? That, like, what we think is not the same. Right? What does it look like to make California money living back in the South?
Yeah. Or like when I see people who still work at these big corporations, I'm like, the way that you spend, like, I can see by the way that you're spending money, but just by looking at you, I used to spend money like that too.
When I became a part of the my first like internship with the financial abacus, that's when I learned how many people were house broke, and how many people were making so much money and it was gone. And like, we looked, just like, you know, if we looked at their income, my income, your income, whatever, it was like, yes, they're making a lot of money, but the show of I'm so this and I'm so that is costing them everything. They don't have anything to give to their kids. They don't have anything to move on with. They can't move if they wanted to. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I need to get free. Oh no, I'm bugging. I was like, what I thought, this mirage is not real. Right. And like, when I started just leaning into my elders, the people who I look into, like, I want to feel that way, because that's how I look at people. I want to feel like that. Right. They're just simple.
Yeah. What an amazing segue into the last segment. Because we're unfortunately running out of time. We could talk about this stuff forever. Of course, we're talking about like liberatory pathways to wealth. And we're talking about like, what does wealth look like that's different from maybe what our parents told us or what society tells us. And we are actively practicing all of these things ourselves. So what is something that you two are actively working to unlearn yourselves right now?
For me, shame. And unlearning this role that we often have of taking care of everybody.
Yes.
What does it look like for me to take care of me? So at the start of the year, I talked a lot about this radical self-care, because the last few years my body broke down. So everyone who's on this is the last few years of my life. Everyone who's on this hamster wheel and moving and pushing and going, I had to, because my body stopped. So I am unlearning the compulsion, quite frankly, to push myself so hard that my body has to shut down in order for me to get the message. And I have carried a lot of shame about, this is not a singular story. This is, unfortunately, someone described it as a rite of passage for us, that this experience happens. And since it started and I went through the hardest year of my life last year, I am on a real journey to get rid of all the shame and everything that I'm carrying and walking around with that isn't mine. I'm giving other people their stuff back.
Amen.
Not taking it on and choosing peace. And it sounds so easy. It's not. It's 1 week feeling amazing. It's the next week being terrified of all these changes that are happening at the same time. So those are the things I'm really unlearning, is compulsion, the shame, and not being everything to everybody anymore.
Thank you so much. That's so good.
And I'm the little pit bull in the back that's reminding her all the time.
We know.
Every day. Like, girl, what? For me, I went through that quote unquote rite of passage, right? And we talk about that a lot. And I think one of the things I'm learning now, like, especially in this last year, because this last year for me has been moving onto and building my home on a land that my ancestors bought to get free, right? To literally get free from the enslavers, to get free from that, and living there and being on the land and being like, yo, this is their freedom land, and somehow it turned into mine, right? Like, and you would think it's 100 years later or whatever the case may be, and it's like, no, this land is like my freedom too. Like, it feels just as impactful as it did for them, like me getting free from just all the things of what I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to do it and what I'm supposed to do with my money and da da da. And I'm supposed to just grow it just to grow it, like, like, like everybody's just like, just keep on growing it. And I'm like, I don't want to work forever. I don't want to do that, right? Like, even that is like a unlearning. Is like, what is the thing that I'm aiming to reach, right? It doesn't have to just be this like, big open thing. Like, I don't want to work forever. I don't want to do that. And like, just being able to say that to people, like, I'm like unlearning and just sitting with, like, it's okay for me to be okay. Like, it's okay for me to live simply. It's okay for me to be happy. It's okay for me to choose not to be stressed. It's okay for me not to choose the hardest option or the longest journey or the big like thing at the end, right? It's okay for me to say, like, actually, I want to do that. I actually just want to chill, right? I want to chill a little bit more and more and more and more, actually. So it's like, for me, it's like, because I have the capacity and I think I'm a really smart person, people are like, do the hard thing because you can. And I'm like, how about you do it?
Yeah.
Why are you asking me to do it? Or if you want me to do it, build all the supportive things around it for me to do it. So it's just, yeah, and then pay me. That's always going to be a thing. Like, hello? So it's like for me, it's just learning that, like, it's okay for me to be okay.
Yep.
It's okay for me to know where my limit is. It's okay for me not to want to just keep, growing and growing, could be a cajillionaire. And I don't care about that. It's okay for me to unplug. It's okay for me to say like, hey, I'm sorry you're going through that. And I don't have the capacity right now. And I think, being who we are, that is always the role, right? We always say it, right? And even, activism spaces, Black women have the answers. And it's like, maybe I have an answer and I'm going to give it to you and I hope you work on that. Yeah, like here's the thing, and I hope y'all like. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like Chat GPT or whatever you're gonna do, because like I'm not. Yeah, but I'm not about to keep doing this, right? So it's just like learning that like I can be okay, and I can be loved, and I can be protected, and I don't have to fight against that protection. I don't have to keep putting myself on the front line. Like learning like I do enough, and I'm gonna keep doing more because that's who I am, right? But only based on what I feel. And whoever doesn't like that, that's cool. Go find your other hero. Baby, I'm not it. It's okay. I don't have to be your hero. It's okay.
How can our audience find out more about what you do and follow you and get in contact with you if you want them to?
Yeah. If we want them to, of course we do. We wouldn't be here if we didn't want you to. I'm Sabia Wade everywhere. And then you'll look me up and find a billion things because I'm just a billion things kind of person. So yeah, Sabia Wade everywhere.
At Sabia Wade.
At Sabia Wade, SabiaWade.com.
Not Sabia Wade everywhere.
No, not everywhere. Yeah, Sabia Wade. That's it.
And you'll find me at Orchid Capital Collective. That's on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. And personally, I don't use social media. So
you'll just find her with me.
You'll find me with Sabia.
Yeah. if you need her, just hit me up, and then I'll get the message across. So, but again, this is her working on her protective layers of insulating herself and her liberation. So, yeah, it's a package.
Yes, and you'll find us and me at Mandy Bynum everywhere. Sanctumfoundation.org. Thank you, ladies, so very, very much for joining me. This was an amazing conversation. Do you have any last words that you want to share?
My last thing is thank you for having us. And also just really appreciate being around women that I can learn from and grow from and be with and be my full unmasked self, because I'm a lot. I've been given a lot. But I love that. Like being able to be my full self is just a gift.
Yeah. No, thank you for having us, for having me. This is what's deeply important. I know we touched on it a little bit, but community is how we step off the path, get free, find who we want to be free with, and do what we want to do. So yeah.
Fix each other's crown. All right. Thank you so much. See you soon.